Holy Jaylen Withers!
This is Tyler Hansbrough, and you're listening to Locked On Tar Heels.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? Happy Wednesday. It's March 12th, 2025. Welcome into this live postcast edition of the Locked On Tar Heels podcast. Coming at you after Carolina wins to open up their ACC Tournament play over Notre Dame in the second round. I'm your host, Isaac Schade. You're joining me at the place to get your Tar Heels content every single day. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Special shout out to all the everydayers joining us, all the members of the Locked On Tar Heels Discord, and of course, our great insiders. This episode is brought to you by TurboTax. You ready for a stress-free tax experience and the most money back guaranteed? Head on over to TurboTax.com today and get matched with your tax expert. All right, guys. Woo! Thank goodness the season is not over, which could have been a reality had Carolina lost today. Isn't that weird to think about this time of year? It is the truth. Instead, Carolina wins by 20 over Notre Dame, 76-56. They run their record to 21-12 on the season. I checked KenPom just before we started, and it had not updated. Oh, it literally just updated. Carolina moves up one spot to 36th at KenPom following this win. Another reason, again, why you want to just continue to win and win big, because that's good for your computer numbers, and that's good for the selection committee to see. Good grief. Carolina keeps climbing the charts in three-point percent. I'm just looking at some of this now that KenPom is refreshed. Holy goodness. Anyway, we'll get to all of that, y'all. Crazy, crazy stuff. Obviously, this is going to be a celebration, a party, and not a therapy session. We always appreciate that because any therapy session at this point would have been an end-of-season therapy session, and that's not what we wanted to do. Thank goodness Carolina did not need a miracle Elliot Cadeau 4-point play this time to beat Notre Dame. This thing was over like 3 or 4 minutes into it as Jaylen Withers is just raining threes from all over the Spectrum Center. Crazy, crazy stuff. And I think that's the most important thing here is that Carolina did the things you would want them to do in this scenario. Came out, took care of business early and often, and ultimately, kept the lead. I know it dropped down to 14 right before half. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but essentially kept the lead at 16 to 22-ish most of the second half and finished. I believe the biggest lead was 24. Let me look if I'm lying to you about that. Yes, 24 when they were up 74-50 late in the second half. And so really nice. Carolina, comfortable win. Nice and easy, not much game pressure. That's what you want in this kind of scenario. And again, the game was over very early because, again, perhaps the best news in this thing it was 2:39 on the clock. Coach Davis brings in a whole cadre of subs and got all the starters out. To that point, literally no regular rotation players played more than 30 minutes other than RJ Davis. He played 31, 25 for Elliot Cadeau, 20 for Drake Powell. Some of that was foul issues. We'll talk about that later. Ven-Allen Lubin, 26, Jaylen Withers, 29. Seth played 22, 17 for Ian, and just 10 for Jay Wash. So really, really, really nice that Carolina was able to get this comfortable victory. And that's what you're looking for. You want to win. And if possible, you win at all costs, right? But if possible, do it without having to expend too much energy in making it happen. What I loved about it is you wonder, coming into a game like this, all right, Carolina had been on that 6-game winning streak where they looked really, really good. And then you play Duke and you hang tough with them for most of the game. Obviously, the end result was by 13. It's like, well, that didn't look as good. Fine, whatever. The question was, can you reset? Coach Rob and I talked about that on yesterday's show. Would Carolina be able to get back going the way they had been prior to that Duke game? And it was a resounding yes for me, right? I don't know if you felt that way, but I was like, yes, the Tar Heels picked right back up where they had left off. So here's where we're going on the show today. Thank you, by the way, for joining me. I know a bunch of people are probably literally getting off of work as we're talking. Maybe you're watching this or listening to it as you drive home from work. If you're watching it, be safe out there. Don't rear end somebody in traffic on the way home. We'll talk some big picture stuff. We'll talk some nitty gritty stuff. We'll look ahead. I'm watching some other bubble action in front of me right now. Unfortunately, Texas is winning by 15. We'll look ahead to tomorrow a little bit. We don't need to do that too much because we'll have a full Thursday show. Coach Pat Kilby's going to join me for that. We'll get an update from him on their state championship win and get ready for the Wake Forest game. Speaking of which, Coach Rob and Milligan are on their way right now to, they're on the bus, literally as we speak. Coach Rob told me he was watching the game on the bus with the guys. I even told him we'd be going live and I'd give them a shout out in case he was watching. So what's up, Coach Rob and Milligan? Good luck to you guys. So excited for you. Go do work in the NAIA National Tournament. All right, here's where we're starting. There is nowhere else we can go other than Jaylen Withers. Oh my goodness. And really, it's the front line in totality. We'll talk about that. But with all due respect to Ven-Allen Lubin and his double-double, Jaylen Withers, career high 21 points, 1 rebound shy of both front court players having a double-double in this game. He had 9. Also, Jay Witt contributed an assist, 2 blocks, and 2 steals. But this dude got cooking in the first half. It was just a barrage. 5 threes in the first half, which is that he had never had more than 4 in an entire game in his 5-year college basketball career. And he set that in the first half, finishes with 7 made threes for Jaylen Withers. Let me see in real time. How many did Notre Dame hit as a team? 6. Jaylen Withers had more threes by himself than Notre Dame did. At one point in this game, I think the score was Notre Dame 17, Jaylen Withers 15. It was one of those kind of games. I love it when that stuff happens. But honestly, you love it for him. You wish he had found it earlier in the season. I think we might be having different conversations in Carolina, seated very differently right now. But look, we're here and we're enjoying the ride while we can. I'm so very happy for this dude and having a career day in Charlotte, kind of back home. And the question now, can it continue to do so? It has been lately, wasn't as efficient against Duke. And if I remember correctly, back to Virginia Tech last week, he wasn't as strong in that game. But man, in totality, what a close to his career Jaylen Withers is having right now. Let's flip to the other backcourt player, Ven-Allen Lubin. Carolina was back to this starting lineup after obviously Ty Claude started senior day against Duke. This starting lineup, do you realize this? Undefeated. Carolina has not lost when it's Elliot Cadeau, RJ Davis, Drake Powell, Jaylen Withers, and Ven-Allen Lubin. That's where I think it's 6-0 now because it was a different starting lineup in the Syracuse game that started the 6-game winning streak, and then they switched right after that, which would have been the Virginia game, right? Or NC State. NC State was the next one. But Ven-Allen Lubin, 17 points, 10 boards. Importantly, 5 of each kind, 5 offensive, 5 defensive, shot 8 of 13 in this game, 1 assist, 0 turnovers, 2 blocks, and a steal. Even attempted his first 3-pointer of the season. He missed it, but still, whatever. That's cool. What I loved is that Notre Dame was just switching everything. Great. So Carolina just ran simple action. It wasn't confusing. They would just set a screen up top. Notre Dame would switch it. Ven-Allen takes his new defender to the post. Bada bing, bada boom. Don't even go to the other side of the floor and rotate back for re-entry or a different angle. It's just switch, post, entry pass. I mean, you got 6'0" Marcus Burton on you. Of course, you're going to dump it in there and look to finish, right? Like, it just makes sense. So really good of Carolina to recognize that and to get going with it. I was actually going to talk about this later, but what I loved is that for all of the great 3-point shooting in the first half, Carolina came out in the second half, and I don't know about you. I had a concern. I was at least somewhat worried that Carolina would come out in the second half and fall in love with shooting threes because they had made so many in the first half. And that's not like, if you're hitting them and it's in rhythm, absolutely keep bombing away. But I didn't want Carolina to fall in love with it and fall apart. And you know what? They didn't. They came out and were really focused on this 2-man game of getting entry looks and making that happen. And I believe the first 3-point look was that Jaylen Withers corner 3. It was off a blob action to RJ, kick to Elliot on the left wing, quick swing to Jay Witt all alone in the corner. Great action there. And that was the first 3-point attempt, I think 3 or 4 minutes into the second half. So really proud of Carolina's front court and their day. And just the offensive wisdom is what I would say. Now, a big part of the reason for the front court having some historic kind of career days for them, aside from Jaylen Withers shooting, was the backcourt. And it was not just Elliot and it was not just RJ. Man, this was a great day from both of these dudes. RJ Davis, who continues, by the way, stepping on the floor again to set the all-time ACC record for most game plays, played Elliot Cadeau. Just 3 points in this game, right? Like that's kind of been his MO lately, not scoring much. He had a confident 3 and hit it. But outside of that, 10 assists, just 2 turnovers. That's a 5-to-1 assist to turnover ratio. I'm really good at dividing 10 by 2. And 6 boards, great stuff there, and committed just 1 foul. And what was funny about that foul is it was Notre Dame's first offensive possession of the game. Carolina had made a 3. Oh, wow, this is another wire-to-wire win. That just hit me. Carolina, good grief. Okay, I'm going to save that for tomorrow. Coach Pat Kilby and I will talk about that. But Drake Powell hits a 3 to start the game, and then Elliot Cadeau commits a foul on Carolina's first defensive possession. And I was just like, oh, dang, it's going to be one of those kind of days for Elliot. But that was it. That was his only foul. He even took some turns on Marcus Burton in this game. And literally the next couple possessions for Elliot were that made 3 and a really good pitch ahead to Ven-Allen Lubin, if I remember correctly, for the dunk. And so really, really good floor game for Elliot. Committed that early foul, but nothing else. Really proud of him for that effort. And then as for RJ, not a prolific day, but still 13 points, right? It's good when your non-prolific day is 13 points. 3 of 7 from the field, 3 of 6 from 3, and another perfect day from the free throw line where he was 4 of 4. RJ continues to set his own personal single season high in free throw percentage. Great stuff there. Had 3 rebounds, 6 assists, and just 1 turnover. That means the combination of Cadeau and Davis, 16 assists, just 3 turnovers. I mean, that's crazy, you guys. That combined with what the front court guys did, I mean, that's just a day, right? That's phenomenal, phenomenal stuff there. All right, so much more to get to. We want to talk about Carolina bombing away from 3. We want to talk about the defensive job they did on Marcus Burton. So we're going to hit all of that and so much more coming up in just a second. Right after I tell you about TurboTax. Look, taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting and wondering and worrying some more. But now, Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. Also, you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now, this is taxes. So get an expert right now on TurboTax.com. It's only available on TurboTax.com, live full service, real-time updates only in the iOS mobile app. And you can see the guaranteed details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. Okay, gang, let's get right back into this thing. By the way, if you listen to today's show with Coach Rob and I, Coach Rob laid out 3 specific things he wanted to see the Tar Heels do, not just today, but all week long. So we're going to unpack that in tomorrow's show, look at how Carolina did with that. So just keep that in mind. That's one of the places we're going to go on the Thursday full show. What was interesting about this game for me with Carolina, they took a 21-point lead in the first half. And it wasn't one of those games where it ever got out to like 30, 32, 35, right? They didn't keep expanding it, but it never got lower than 12, right? Like Notre Dame made that run at the end of the first half, and then they had the first bucket of the second half before Carolina went on their own big run to shut that down. And so I think they cut it down to 12 right at the beginning of the second half, and then Carolina pushed it right back out, and it never got closer than, I'll go back and look, but probably 14, 16, 18, something like that. And so a very comfortable win, despite not really expanding the lead, and so we'll take that. One of the other things I was wondering about in this game was Carolina's three-point shooting. You know, we talked earlier about how the Tar Heels were able to get back to their pre-Duke winning ways, and a big part of what had been going so well was Carolina's shooting from beyond the arc. You know, they set a season high with 15 made threes against Virginia Tech. They tied a season high at that point with 13 made threes against Syracuse that started that 6-game winning streak. So they've been shooting it very well lately. And so how would it be coming back from that Duke game where they had shot, it was 9 of something, it was 38-ish%, maybe 36%. And that question was answered early as Carolina just kept hitting and hitting and hitting. For the game, they finished 1 made 3 shy of 50%, 13 of 28. So they tie the second most threes they've made this season, meaning in 2 of the last 3 games, they've hit 15 and 13 threes on a good percentage. It's not like 13 of 49, right? Like, no, just shy of 50%. It's going to be very hard to beat a team, meaning the opposition beating Carolina, when the Tar Heels are shooting this way, right? And so that's really good. Again, it was a diversity of Tar Heels making a bunch of threes. 5 Carolina players hit at least 1 3. They had 9 in the first half. That was the most threes the Tar Heels have hit in any single half in any game this season. And again, I loved that they didn't fall in love with the 3 despite hitting it so well. And that was a big part of what made this game really good. Next thing I want to go to, this was part of the Four Corners preview, as we had said that Carolina had to shut down Marcus Burton. Let me remind us all, he had been out. He got hurt during their MTE. I think they were in Battle for Atlantis, if I remember correctly, but he got hurt during that event, came back for that Carolina game back on January 4th, and didn't start, if I remember correctly, but did end up scoring like 23 points in that game. He came into today 3rd leading scorer, not in the ACC, in the nation, was the ACC's leading scorer at 22 points a game. Carolina literally cut that in half. Marcus Burton only scored 11 points in this game. And I know part of it is they're playing without Braden Shrewsbury, and that's a whole thing that we've got to recognize. But still, Marcus Burton just 11 points on 3 of 11 shooting. He had just 5 at the half, didn't make a single 3, and got, I think, 5 of his 11 points at the free throw line. And so really, really good stuff there. And I even thought he was more of a factor in the second half because he was making penetration, drawing fouls on multiple guys, but most importantly on Drake Powell. But it just didn't amount to enough to matter in this game. And I thought that was important. Interestingly enough, on today's full episode, Coach Rob and I had suggested that we thought Carolina's best plan defensively was to start Drake Powell, 6'6", on Marcus Burton, who's 5'11", 6 foot. I compared it to when Coach Davis a couple years ago started Leaky at 6'9" on Kihei Clark, who's 5'11", from Virginia, and basically took Virginia out of anything they wanted to do. Now, Burton is a different player than Clark. Clark is more crafty floor manager guy, whereas Burton is more just downhill, get to the rim. So this was about using athleticism and length to get in front and stay in front. So Carolina started with Drake Powell. They used some Seth Trimble on him when Drake had to go to the bench. Elliot, as I mentioned, took some turns on him. But with Carolina, I thought very wisely deploying their small forward 3 onto Marcus Burton, which is so nice about having a small forward with length and switchability in that way, that then RJ and Elliot could guard the other guards, who are both 6'4", nothing they haven't seen this year. So really, really wise from Hubert Davis and the staff, in my opinion. And, for Drake Powell, oh, by the way, beyond guarding Marcus Burton, also had time to score 9 points on 4 of 5 from the field, including making the first basket of the game. So really, really good stuff there. One of the issues from the Duke game on Saturday, Carolina managed just 8 assists in that game. Carolina did well with turnovers, just 6, but still only 8 assists. And they needed to get better at sharing the basketball. And boy, did they make up for it here. They had more assists in the first half of this game, 10, than they did in that entire Duke game. 8 finished with 19 assists. Obviously, again, a lot of that was due, 16 of them were the combination of Elliot and RJ, but still really good stuff there from Carolina. 19 assists to just 8 turnovers. And honestly, Carolina got sloppy in some stretches in the second half with the turnovers. They only had 2 in the entire first half. There was a stretch with back-to-back-to-back turnovers in the second half. It was Elliot's lone turnover of the game, trying to throw a lob to Ven-Allen Lubin, just threw it up a little bit too high. And then Seth had 2 turnovers on the next 2 possessions. And then, a slew of some others throughout the second half. So you want to tidy that up, but thankfully it didn't really matter all that much. Speaking of passing and ball movement, my favorite play of this entire game came in the first half, and it was the bucket that gave Carolina 35 points. I forget the moment of the game, but you should go back and find this. Carolina is already at the point where they're just filling it up from 3. Everybody's hitting, and it's all in Notre Dame's head. Carolina brings the ball up the floor. I can't remember if it's RJ or Elliot. I want to say it's Elliot. and the Tar Heels just start swinging the ball. The pass that made it really interesting was a kick out, I think from Val to the corner right in front of the Notre Dame bench. I forget who the personnel was, but there was a pump fake three from a credible source, enough that, Notre Dame's coming out of their pads. Then a little mini drive to close out to drive the closeout, another kick, another pump fake, drive the closeout, another kick. And then it winds up, I think RJ pump faked, drove, left it off for Ven-Allen Lubin for the dunk. In totality, 9 times, not 9 heels touched the ball because there's only 5 on the floor, but you know what I mean? Like 9 different times a different Tar Heel touched the ball, and it wound up, because of what Carolina was able to do outside, Carolina was able to get that ball inside and finish beautifully. I mean, it was just a thing of perfection. I absolutely loved it. I forgot to look, by the way, as we're talking about that, at points in the paint. 28-26. Carolina didn't dominate that as much as I hoped or thought they might, but fine, whatever. That possession in particular was really, really a thing that I loved to see. Okay, we got to talk about the end of the first half. Carolina had been up by 21 in the waning seconds of the first half. They were still up 20. Let me see when that was. Carolina is up 20 with 46 seconds to go. They're up 43-23. And in the course of that 46 seconds, allow Notre Dame to go on a 6-0 run to close out the half and get the lead down to 14. It was an and one from Tay Davis, and then a Matt Aloko 3 just right there before the buzzer. It was tough. Like, I know there's going to be consternation over that. And I thought the bigger issue wasn't that. Like, Carolina had played good defense. Notre Dame almost turned it over again on the baseline, found Aloko kind of luckily, and he made the shot. Like, you live with it, right? And so I wasn't too terribly concerned about it, but overall, it was a 9-2 run to close the half. And it was some of that. Like, Carolina was getting stops, and it felt like they were moving a little too quickly, out of sorts, just like, oh, we've got this big lead. Let's make it bigger, right? Like, and that just wasn't working. And so I'm sure Coach Davis is going to have some stuff from there, but in my opinion, looking back on it now, it wasn't as frustrating or difficult as I thought in real time, but still, you want to clean those things up and not allow that to happen. All right, we got to get a bubble check because obviously there's a lot of bubble action today around the country. There are several teams that, are in that we're not as concerned about. Like, for example, Arkansas feels pretty comfortable that they're in now. They almost lost to South Carolina, barely won, ended up winning by 4 points. Unfortunately, Texas is up on Vandy right now. They're just going to commercial, but I think Texas is up by like 18 right now. 61-43 with like 8 something left. Make it 61-45 now. And here's what's frustrating about that. Vanderbilt is who they're playing. They're the 12th seed in the SEC. Vanderbilt's 20-11 on the season. They're 8-10. They've had some good moments, but they've struggled a little bit here down the stretch. The problem is, because of how the SEC is set up and because of the strength of it, literally everyone on the neutral floor like this, literally 14 of the 16 teams are quad 1 games. The only teams that are not are LSU and South Carolina. Literally everyone else is a quad 1 opportunity at this point. So it's like Texas is going to win this game, and it's going to be a quad 1 win against the 12th place team in their conference that's 8-10, but it's going to be a quad 1 game. And this is some of the frustration I have. Like, I understand the quad system, but it's like, if we're going to talk about it as these definitive things, we got to look at the specificity of who the teams are that teams are beating, right? Like, it frustrates me because while the net numbers might tell you this team is ranked here, I don't know that they're any worse than, like, I feel like Wake Forest, who's like 60 or 70, would beat Texas. But just because of the SEC of it all, their net ranking is so much higher. This is where it now I hear it. Carolina has made their own bed and they got to lie down in it, but still, there's a big frustration for me. All right, I do want to get to your comments, and we'll look around at things. Oh, by the way, I forgot to say one of the things tonight is that we really need Iowa to beat Ohio State. It's Ohio State and it is Boise State and I think Texas that are really close to Carolina. Obviously, we don't know where the selection committee's at, but this is why I'm really bummed about Texas losing. Boise State doesn't play till tomorrow. They've got a big game against San Diego State. We're going to be big Aztecs fans in that one. And tonight, we're going to be big Hawkeye fans. Go, 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 you fighting Caitlin Clarks. Make this thing happen. All right. We're going to continue to look at your comments. I'll get us set up for the details of tomorrow's game. All that and more coming up in just a second. Right after I tell you about Factor. Are you looking to optimize your nutrition this year? Well, Factor makes eating well easy with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved meals that are fresh, never frozen, and ready to heat and eat in just 2 short minutes. With 40 options and across 8 different dietary preferences every week, you can customize your meals to fit your lifestyle, whether it's calorie smart, protein plus, keto, whatever it may be. Plus, Factor even offers wholesome smoothies, breakfasts, and grab-and-go snacks to keep you fueled up all day long. I love how Factor takes the stress out of meal planning because life is crazy and does so without sacrificing taste, man. These meals, they are packed with flavor. The convenience is unbeatable. No prep, no mess, just great food in a few minutes. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50off and use code LockedOnCollege50off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Again, that's code LockedOnCollege50off at factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your very first box. Okay, guys, let's move on over to the chat and see what kind of stuff we got going on, man. Ninja Warrior Bros. Elliot was great today. He was, man. We have been critical of Elliot quite often this season, right? Like we just recognize the reality of that. And so it's one of those like, let the apologies or let the praise be just as loud as the disrespect. And Elliot Cadeau had a really strong game today. So thankful and proud of him. You know, as we said, he's not been scoring a ton, but Elliot has been doing much better in recent games in floor managing, and that's good stuff. Melinda Dolphin, this is a great point. We didn't talk about, while we were just talking about the quad games, I didn't say this is a quad 2 win. That's really good. It's not a quad 1, but hey, we'll take every extra win we can get, especially if it's not quad 3 or quad 4. So it's one of those where it is a nice data point on the resume. So that's a great point there by Melinda. Mark Schrader, let's go ahead and look ahead to this now because Mark says it. Looking forward to tomorrow. No question in my mind. This is a tournament team that will handle Wake. I said it earlier this week and I said it after the Duke game. Carolina didn't win that game. The eye test tells you that team you just saw today is a tournament team. They are a tournament caliber team. The problem is, are they a tournament team in terms of making it? They might not be if they don't take care of business because their resume and, as I said, their lack of ability to figure themselves out until February causes a big problem. But to Mark's point, this team is now playing like a tournament level team. To Mark's point, this team is a team that just made a win over Notre Dame look much easier than it did earlier in the season. This is a team that should make a win over Wake Forest look much easier than their 1-point loss did earlier this season. Reminder, both of those games, the Notre Dame game that Carolina barely won, it was up in South Bend. The loss to Wake Forest was in Winston-Salem. And so we recognize all that. And so now Carolina is going to have the advantage here. Obviously, it's in the state of North Carolina. Wake will have a contingent, but there should be more Tar Heels in attendance. And Carolina should handle Wake. Similar to today with Marcus Burton, I'm curious to see who's going to start out on Hunter Chalice. Will it be Drake Powell? I don't know. That's one of the things that's nice with this bigger lineup that Carolina has been utilizing. T-Man, what is up? T-Man says, hey, Isaac, so West Virginia is down 5 with 50 seconds left to Colorado, who is 3-17 in conference, and they're currently a 10 seed according to Jerry Palm at CBS. How far do you think that would knock West Virginia down? This is a great point. Folks, bear with me, and let's get this thing pulled up, which I guess we should check out the score as well. Did they end up winning? I don't know what happened because I was not paying attention to it. And so getting to Big 12 scores here really quick. Colorado wins 67-60 over West Virginia. So the Mountaineers now 19-13, have not got to 20 wins. They're 10-10 in the Big 12. One of the key things for West Virginia is that they do have a lot of good wins this season that they've been able to pick up. Let me get to their page that has all the quad stuff so we can dive into this a little further because this is interesting. So West Virginia, 10 losses in quad one. Yeesh. But you know what? They got 6 quad one wins, and that's going to hold some weight. They beat Gonzaga. They beat Arizona. They beat Kansas. They beat Kansas in Fog Allen, by the way, something Carolina could not do. They also beat Iowa State. That's a big win. They won at Cincinnati. Fine, whatever. And gosh, like, see this, we were just talking about the quad ones. West Virginia got a quad one win by winning at Utah. Utah is a terrible basketball team. It's infuriating to me that it's that kind of thing that's like, oh yeah, look at West Virginia's 6 quad one wins. Okay, great. They beat Utah. Whoop-de-frickin' do. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, West Virginia outside of that is 4-2 in quad two and doesn't have any losses in quad 3 or quad 4, just 9 total games there. This game against Colorado, again, because Big 12, like Colorado is 90th in the net, but it's a quad 2 win, similar to what Carolina picked up today, a quad 2 win over a team in the 90s in the net. So it's not a terrible loss. It's going to give them their third quad 2 loss. So I think they will fall, but I don't think they'll fall a ton if we're being honest, T-Man and others who might be checking in. Let's look at the bracketology and where, you mentioned where Jerry Palm had them. Let's look at where, oh man, I just noticed Lenardi has moved Carolina to the first, up to first team out. So right now we are up above Boise State. Texas still below Carolina. I'm curious what he'll do to update after Texas wins here, but right above Carolina, last 4 in is Ohio State and then Xavier. So really, really big Iowa fans over Ohio State tonight. Xavier doesn't play till tomorrow. They play Marquette. Come on, Shaka Smart, do us a solid. As for West Virginia, where does Lenardi have West Virginia right now as a 9 seed? Man, I just think that's a little too safe for this loss to matter. And so that T-Man, it's good for West Virginia to lose, but ultimately I think they're too far in for it to be a big issue. So good question there. It doesn't hurt Carolina. I mean, it doesn't hurt Carolina, but I also don't know that it helps so much as well. Let's see if we got any other. Oh man, Derek Tyson. What's up? Derek says, if we play with that defensive intensity and share the ball on offense like we did today, this team can compete with anybody. It's true. It's absolutely true. Obviously, Carolina, we already talked about how they shared the ball today. We already talked about how they shot the ball today. Field goal percentage in totality was 48%, just above the 3-point field goal percentage. But man, the defensive intensity was so strong. Notre Dame shot 32% in this game, not from 3, from the field, 32%, and just 30% from 3. And it wasn't just about guarding Marcus Burton. Ian had multiple possessions where he was working really hard to stay in front of people, was really proud of that. And so I think that's a great point here by Derek. We're obviously going to go deeper into that on tomorrow's show because that was one of Coach Rob's points, was that defensive intensity. Derek Tyson says, would we want Dayton to win their tourney? I know they are a bubble team, but maybe they can get to 50 in the net and get us another quad 1 win. Derek, I hear what you're saying. The problem is they're not going to get in unless they win the A10 tourney, because they don't have an at-large resume strong enough to get in. So I think, honestly, while you'd love that to turn into them to get to top 50, them getting into the tournament, I think would be worse for Carolina, because that's then a bid thief and it pushes Carolina one further spot off the bubble. So I think it's actually better. Like, hey, you know what? Let's cheer for Dayton to get all the way to the A10 championship and lose on a buzzer beater. That's what we want to see, right? Like, them have a great run, maybe go up in the net, but not win it, because that would actually hurt Carolina. Derek also says, and I wanted to get to this and I had forgotten, so I'm glad Derek said it. We're just a Derek Tyson question and answer session at this point. Thought it was huge for Ian to get in at the end and get some buckets to gain confidence. We're going to need him going forward. I just mentioned I thought Ian did a really nice job at defensively at multiple points in this game, but he didn't do much on offense. In fact, to Derek's point, Ian only scored 4 points in this game, and they were both in, the last couple minutes of the game. He had a transition bucket and then almost had another one, but got fouled, but then scored on the blob play coming out of that, just a little baseline jumper. Remember, Ian had been scorching from 3 going into the Duke game. I believe didn't hit a 3 in the Duke game and only attempted 1 in this game. Honestly, it looked really good, but it missed and played. Ian did 17 minutes. And so it's just what I guess the nice thing is, and I think Coach Pack and I talked about this last week, you'd love for Ian to get going and have strong games, but the way Carolina's playing right now, they haven't specifically needed him at the big level. Now, if he could be going along with everything else, that's icing on the cake and it's great. But Carolina's doing what they're doing despite Ian not having massive performances, so we can live with that. Brandon McLean, you had said something. I had seen it before we started. Oh, yes. Brandon McLean asked, does anyone know if a 22 or 23 win UNC team has ever missed the tourney? This is a great question. Brandon, here's my promise to you. I do not know that off the top of my head, but I promise you I will do the research before the Thursday show, and we're going to answer that on the Thursday show because that's a great question. I'm really intrigued to know the answer myself because honestly, if Carolina beats Wake tomorrow, they will have 22 wins, but I think would not be in the tournament at that point, barring what happens with Ohio State and Boise State and Xavier and stuff, right? Like we got to recognize that that is part of it as well. And so we'll see there. All right, guys, I'm sure there's some more questions, but that's good for us for right now. We're up to 37 minutes, and I know you got to get to eating your supper. I need to go see my family and hang out with them. So I just want to say, as always, a big word of thanks to everyone for diving in with us today. We will, as I said, be back tomorrow with the full show. Remember, Carolina Wake, 2:30 Eastern tomorrow, or really, 30 minutes after Duke Georgia Tech goes final. Whew, I'm torn about this one, right? Like at one level, you'd like to not have to face Duke in the semifinal because if you can beat Georgia Tech, then you'd probably have a shot at playing Clemson or Louisville in the championship game where a win gets you into the NCAA tournament. But if you don't play Duke, then you're not getting a shot at that quad 1 win. I think it would be better for Georgia Tech to win and Carolina to advance even against Georgia Tech instead of Duke, get to the championship game and have a shot against like probably Louisville or Clemson. I think that's what I'd prefer. I'm curious. You guys let me know. What do you think? Would you rather have a shot at Duke to get that massive quad 1 win against the number 1 team in the nation, or have a potentially easier path to actually winning the ACC tournament and getting the auto bid? Where are you at? Man, that's an interesting question. I'm glad we thought of that. Okay. You guys, as I was saying, tomorrow, 2:30 against Wake Forest and Hunter Sallis. We'll see what happens there. If you've not subscribed to the show on YouTube and audio, make sure you do that now. I said it yesterday. I'll say it again. Massive thanks to everyone. We have just crossed 10,000 YouTube subscribers. Y'all are the absolute stinking best, and that's great stuff. If you've not joined the Locked On Tar Heels Discord channel, we'd love for you to come be part of that family. If you want to go even deeper with the show, I'm going to start dropping in every portal rumor I hear. And the only place I'm going to do that is the Locked On Tar Heels Insider program. You can sign up for that. The link is in the show notes as well. All right, guys, it's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. We march on, win in advance, survive in advance. It's great news against Wake tomorrow. We'll do it. Coach Pack and I'll get you ready for that game tomorrow. But until then, peace.